Hello everybody, I am Evelil and I will tell you one story of a good viewing. Nathan Cole loved books. More than people, more than sleep, sometimes even more than food. He had spent his life in libraries, his love for the written word consuming him from a young age. At the age of 29, he had become a librarian at a small, aging public library, nestled in a forgotten corner of the city. It wasn't a busy place, more of a sanctuary for quiet souls like him, and Nathan relished in the silence. He knew the collection inside and out, the feel of every book on every shelf, the smell of old paper and ink. But, perhaps, the one thing he loved more than the books themselves was the mysteries they held. One late evening, long after closing time, Nathan wandered down into the basement of the library, a musty, cluttered space where the oldest and least used books were stored. It was a place he hadn't ventured into for months. As he walked past shelves upon shelves, his eye caught something unusual. A book, sitting on a forgotten shelf in the farthest corner of the room. One he had never seen before. It was out of place. The shelf was dusty and cobwebbed, and yet this book lay there, pristine, untouched. It had no title on its worn leather cover, no author's name, and no markings of any kind. Just an old, cracked surface, as if it had been there for ages, waiting. The dim light from the overhead bulb flickered slightly, casting strange shadows that seemed to bend around the book, giving it an almost unnatural glow. Nathan, curiosity overriding his better judgment, reached out for it. His fingers trembled slightly as he made contact with the cover, and a strange chill ran up his spine. It wasn't the cold of the basement, but something deeper, an unsettling sensation that sent a ripple of unease through him. Shaking it off, he pulled the book from its shelf and opened it. The pages inside were yellowed and brittle, like the paper had been left to decay for centuries. As he flipped through them, he saw that the text was written in an unfamiliar language. Some of it looked like Latin, some like Old English, but much of it was incomprehensible, a swirling combination of characters and symbols that made no sense. The more he turned the pages, the heavier the air around him seemed to grow. The darkness in the room deepened, pressing in on him as if the library itself were alive. Then he saw it. On a page toward the back, a name stood out, written in thick, black ink. The letters seemed to pulse, almost like they were breathing. Ugaroth. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. The name seemed to reverberate in his mind, echoing in strange, dissonant waves that made his head spin. He didn't know why, but something about it felt wrong. He couldn't explain it, but he felt an inexplicable compulsion to say it out loud, to speak it, to give it sound. So he did. Ugaroth. The moment the name passed his lips, something in the room shifted. A harsh buzzing filled his ears, like static crackling through the air. The light overhead flickered violently, casting long, jagged shadows across the walls. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Nathan pulled back from the book, his pulse quickening, heart pounding in his chest. He glanced at his phone. Suddenly, it vibrated in his pocket, startling him. The screen lit up, revealing a single message from an unknown number. "Why do you remember me?" Nathan's mouth went dry, his blood running cold. He stared at the message for a long moment, unsure of what to do. His fingers shook as he typed back, his mind racing. Was this some kind of sick joke? How could anyone know what he had just said? "Who is this?" The response came almost instantly. "You have seen my name. Now I see you." His heart skipped a beat. He turned toward the basement's narrow hallway, the shadows stretching unnaturally in the dim light. It felt like something was watching him, waiting. The air around him grew suffocating, and a voice, faint and distorted, whispered from behind him. Not words, just a wet, rasping sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep within the walls. Nathan whipped around, but the room was empty. The shelves stood silently, their contents untouched. The whispering stopped. Then, something worse happened. The book moved. It wasn't a sudden jerk or an exaggerated motion, but a subtle shift. The pages began to turn by themselves, each page flipping slowly, as if the book were alive, as if it had a will of its own. Nathan's stomach churned with dread. He backed away, the book's movement unsettling his very soul. His breath caught in his throat, and the air felt thick with something malevolent, something ancient. He slammed the book shut. The turning stopped, but the whispering remained. Faint, but it never ceased. Clutching the book to his chest, he ran up the stairs, his footsteps pounding in the silence of the library. He reached the front desk and set the book down with trembling hands. His fingers still shook uncontrollably as he typed another message. "What do you want from me?" The reply came immediately. "You will remember me." He couldn't stop the shiver that ran down his spine. He grabbed his coat and left the library in a hurry, his thoughts a muddled mess of fear and confusion. He couldn't escape the feeling that something was with him, following him even as he stepped out into the cold night air. His phone buzzed again as he reached his apartment. Another message. "I am coming." Nathan barely slept that night. When he did, he dreamed of eyes. Hundreds, thousands of them, blinking and crawling over his skin. Their gazes were hungry, malevolent, all watching him, judging him. Some were human, others not. Black, empty orbs without pupils, their glistening surfaces like oil on water. He could feel them crawling beneath his flesh, gnawing at his mind. He woke with a start, drenched in sweat. His heart was racing, and he instinctively reached for his phone. The screen was dead, unresponsive. As he sat up, the darkness in his room felt deeper, suffocating. The faintest shift of air made the hairs on his neck prickle. A figure, tall and slender, standing just beyond the foot of his bed. Nathan blinked. The figure didn't move. It stood still, watching him. It had no face, just a smooth, featureless void where its face should have been. But there were eyes. Dozens of eyes. Hundreds. All blinking in unison, staring at him from every inch of its body. It took a step toward him. Nathan screamed, his throat raw with fear. But before the sound could escape, the lights in his room flickered back on. The figure disappeared. Shaking uncontrollably, he checked his phone. Another message. "You should not have spoken my name." His hands trembled as he typed, his mind still reeling. "Who are you?" The response was almost immediate. "I am Yugaroth, and you have remembered me." He could feel its presence pressing against his mind. It wasn't just in the room with him. It was inside him. The next morning, Nathan returned to the library, desperate to end it. He tried to ignore the cold weight of his thoughts, the way the shadows seemed to whisper at the edges of his vision. The book was gone. The basement was empty. The shelves, untouched. His heart pounded in his chest. Someone had taken it. Someone had found it. Or perhaps the book had moved. Then a noise. A faint, unearthly sound, breathing. It was coming from the back corner of the room. The same corner where the book had been. Nathan turned and, to his horror, saw the book on the floor open. The pages were turning. Again. Slowly, methodically. Each page flipped one by one, like the book itself was alive. The air around him grew heavier, suffocating. Nathan's heart thundered in his chest as he approached the book. He wanted to scream, but no sound came. Then, with a sickening jolt, the pages stopped turning. And in black ink, scrawled across the open pages, "You cannot ignore me." Nathan turned to run, his footsteps frantic and loud in the oppressive silence. His phone buzzed again. He knew what it would say. He knew what it would always say. "You will remember me forever." He glanced back one last time at the book, now closed. He froze, unable to breathe. The lights flickered out. The whispering began again. The library's oppressive silence was suffocating. Nathan couldn't breathe. His chest felt tight, as though the walls were closing in around him, pressing down on him with every breath. The whispering, it had never truly stopped. Even as he sprinted out of the basement, past rows of shelves that seemed to lurch closer with each step, he could hear it. A faint sound, not just in his ears, but in the very fabric of his mind. His hands were slick with sweat as he fumbled with the front door, his eyes darting to the rows of books that seemed to shift in the corner of his vision. No matter how hard he tried to focus, they moved. They watched. He had to get out of there. but the door wouldn't open. The handle rattled uselessly in his grasp, as though someone was on the other side, holding it shut. "Let me out." Nathan's voice was hoarse. The words barely escaped his throat, choked by the overwhelming panic that was choking him. His stomach twisted in knots, and his heart beat faster than it ever had before, like it wanted to escape his chest. He pulled harder, but the door was as immovable as stone. He turned and sprinted toward the back exit, only to find it locked as well. The walls of the library, once a comforting sanctuary, now felt like a labyrinth of horror. The ceilings too high, the shadows too deep. Every corner, every stack of books, felt like it was closing in on him, getting darker, more oppressive, as though the entire building had come to life, alive and angry. Then the message on his phone buzzed again. His hands were shaking too violently to read it. He looked at the screen through blurry eyes. "You are trapped. I will find you." The air grew heavy. Nathan spun around, desperate for a way out. But all he saw were the shelves, towering over him, their empty spines whispering in unison. The same eerie whisper from before. He turned back toward the front desk, desperate to run, to escape, but something stopped him. The floor, no, the very ground beneath him, seemed to tremble. He could hear the sound of shifting books now, a soft scraping noise, like fingernails dragging against wood. His heart leaped into his throat. Was it possible? Was there something inside the shelves? Some unseen force moving within the confines of the library? He swallowed, steeling himself for what was about to happen. Suddenly, he felt a chill, freezing and sharp, like an icy wind sweeping through the room, though the windows were tightly shut. Cut through his skin, and he gasped in shock. It was as though the room had been inhabited by a presence, something ancient, cold, and relentless. He looked up and his blood turned to ice. The figure stood in the doorway of the back room. Its eyes, those countless, blinking eyes, were now fixed directly on him. There was no shape to its body, no features except for the endless, writhing mass of dark eyes all over its form, rolling in their sockets, all staring at him. The figure was impossibly tall, impossibly thin, its limbs unnaturally long, like branches of a tree twisted by some malevolent force. "You cannot escape me, Nathan." The voice was both everywhere and nowhere at once. It echoed in his skull, reverberated through the air, curled around his spine like an invisible hand. He backed away, his legs nearly giving out beneath him. The book. He remembered the book. He had to destroy it. He had to make it go away. He couldn't let it take him. Not like this. His phone buzzed again, but he didn't even have the strength to check it anymore. The light in the room flickered once more, and for a brief moment, everything went completely dark. When the light came back, Nathan's heart nearly stopped. The thing was closer now. In a single step, it had crossed the room, its long fingers grazing the walls, leaving behind deep gouges in the wood. It was inside him now, inside his head. The whispers were louder, more distinct, speaking to him directly, echoing in the corners of his mind. "You know me now, Nathan. You have seen my name. You remember." He wanted to scream, but the scream was caught in his throat. His vision swam. The shelves around him seemed to tilt and warp, the very air distorting. The ground beneath his feet buckled. A groaning sound, like the building itself was coming apart, shook the foundation of the library. Books rained down from the shelves, landing in heaps on the floor. He staggered, unable to keep his footing. And then the darkness closed in. It wasn't just the darkness of the library, not the shadows that had been there before. This was different. It felt alive, thick with hunger, with the cold of eternity. It wrapped around him, crushing the air from his lungs, and the whispers grew louder, more urgent, more demanding. They clawed at his sanity. "You are mine, forever. You cannot escape me. You will remember my name, Nathan. Yugarath." The ground beneath his feet gave way. He tumbled into the abyss. When he woke, it was like nothing had changed. He was still in the library, lying on the cold stone floor, the walls around him now silent. The shelves stood, unscathed. The books perfectly arranged. The air was thick, oppressive, and the whispers had stopped. Just like that, he scrambled to his feet, disoriented. His body ached as though he had been dragged through a storm. His heart still raced, but everything felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. He turned to the front desk, his legs shaking beneath him. The book was back there, lying open as though waiting for him. The pages, still flickering, still shifting, as if the book itself were alive. The screen of his phone lit up. The message was simple, but the weight of it crushed him. "I have you." Before he could react, the floor beneath him rumbled again, louder this time, as though something deep within the library's foundations was stirring. The doors to the outside, those doors he had tried to escape through before, slammed shut with a violent bang. The glass in the windows cracked, as if the very building was screaming at him to stay. The figure, the thing, was back, now standing in the center of the library. It towered over him, its gaze fixed on him, its 1,000 eyes blinking, shifting, staring. He couldn't run. He couldn't even move. He wanted to scream, but his voice was lost. His mind was failing him. And in the silence that followed, in the crushing weight of the invisible force that surrounded him, Nathan realized something horrifying. Yuggorath was not just a god. It was a force, a presence that had been waiting, a forgotten entity that no one should have remembered. And now it would never forget him. The figure moved closer, and as Nathan looked into the black void of its face, something shifted in the dark corners of his mind. The whispers had returned. Louder. "You will remember me forever." The air was thick. The god had returned. Thank you very much, and see you all in the next video. Love you guys.